It's almost hard to know where to start with Stereolab, because this is a band that can sometimes seem a bit obsessed with referencing as many bits of music or culture in their songs as possible. It's a band whose lyrics usually allude to some kind of ideology or philosophy, whether that's Marxism or situationism or modernism or postmodernism or surrealism. Some of the musical genres people are trying to define them by include krautrock, lounge music, lo-fi, avant-pop, art pop, kitsch pop, post-rock, retro, futurist, dream pop.
Keep going,
I could
lad.
go on for a while. I won't. You'll be glad to hear. The band, of course, as I've mentioned, is fronted by Tim Gain and Laetitia Sadier, the former of which has described his musical philosophy as to be unique is more important than to be good. So, to those in the audience who haven't really listened to Stereolab before, please do not turn off this podcast already. I don't want to give the impression that this band is absolutely entirely stuck up in the clouds or up their own arses. But, that said, clearly there are some contradictions at hand here. So my opening question to you, Big Ol, is this. Is it possible to describe this band, Stereolab, succinctly, without tending towards the kind of thing that forms the content of Pitchfork journalists' erotic dreams, as I just read out there? So if so, please can you do that for me?
Yeah, it's a good question because, as you say, reading articles, reviews about Stereolab, it can sometimes feel like a kind of literary competition among journalists to name drop as many genres and artists and movements as possible, and
100%.
it is quite draining and tedious sometimes. So I've gone the other way. As you say, I've tried to be concise, so this is what I've gone for. Stereolab can be loud or soft, sometimes French, sometimes English, but always unique. What do you think about that, Jamie?
Wow, man. I actually quite like that. Can you read out for me one more time?
So, can be loud or soft, sometimes French, sometimes English, but always unique. So I'm trying to get at the bilingual singing of Laetitia Sadier.
Yeah.
They're capable of like loud rock songs, but then also softer, delicate moments as well. But do you want to know why I think you like what I've just said there, lad?
Go on. What have I backed myself into a corner here? Why do I like that?
The reason you like that is because it actually follows 5/7/5 form. So that's a haiku.
Oh, it's a haiku. It's a haiku. Oh,
and
I see what you're trying to say.
you fancy yourself as Stanford's poet laureate, but I am the Bard of Stockport, mate. So you need to remember your place.
The Bard of Stockport.
There is only one wordsmith, one carver of language on this podcast, and it is definitely
Very good. I like that, though. You'll have to try and get that published in some journals.
But as a little introduction to the app, I've got quite a fun game planned actually. So thinking about the way that this band are described in the press, I thought it could be quite funny if I read you a list of quotations and you've got to tell me whether you think that I've written them or whether these are actual things that I've managed to find on music publications on the internet. So I thought this could be quite good just to demonstrate the point we're making.
Yeah, please go on. I'm interested.
Right, okay. So the first one, Stereolab, Dots and Loops, track number 3. The best fellatio music there is. Get that song on repeat.
I mean, that's got to be you, hasn't it?
No, mate. No, that is not me. Do you want to know which high-profile producer came up with that quote? It was Pharrell Williams.
Oh, surely not.
From NERD. Yeah.
So Pharrell is getting head to Stereolab.
To the flower called Nowhere. There's quite I don't want to say graphic, but there's quite an intense video on YouTube, let's say, of him talking about this song in quite an energetic way.
I haven't hooked this up yet, but I'm going to play Stereolab in the bathroom with the girl. Play number 3 on the album called Dots and Loops. Put it on repeat and play this with the girl in the shower, and it's going to get crazy. Yeah! Stereolab, man. The best fellatio music there is.
Wow. Sorry, you got no points so far. The second one, I think Cobra and Phases is still my favourite Stereolab record. Some of the sounds on that album are fucking crazy. They defy description, just kind of weird pootling noises. Pootle, thwack pop. They should make a new genre called Pootle pop and put Cobra and Phases in it. What do you reckon?
This is really hard. You've done a good job. If this is you, then you've done a Pootle pop. I swear I've read that. I reckon that's like Pitchfork or someone.
See, that was one of Big Ol's. I've slipped it in there.
Oh my! This is going terribly.
Not out of 2. Right, next one. Whenever a new Stereolab record comes out, I wonder whether it'll sound like the later off-kilter twee-era Stereolab or the band's earlier krautrockish two-chord sound. Judging from the first single, it follows the later off-kilter jazz-pop disco sound rather than their earlier model.
I mean, I want to say that this is written by someone again, but then isn't that the kind of the Better's fallacy when you think you've been wrong twice, you can't be wrong 3 times in a row? I mean, I'm going to say that's got to be a magazine, some kind of internet publication or something.
Wired. So
that was Wired. Okay, well, at least I feel a bit better.
You got 1 point.
Yeah.
The guide to getting into Stereolab's high concept pop. So you want to get into jazzy exotica Stereolab, political Stereolab, krautrocking Stereolab, 60s throwback Stereolab, other Stereolab related projects.
I mean, you? I don't know, you?
Wired again, mate. Wired again.
Wired again.
Let's see if you can rescue it with this last one.
Oh,
Emperor Tomato Ketchup documents a pre-millennial moment in which people, jazzbos in Chicago and red mods doing the mashed potato in Washington, D.C., riot girls in the Northwest, bass cadets in Sheffield, and the chic set in Paris, and the retro futurists in Birmingham, and especially crate diggers in Tokyo, London and New York, wondered if record collecting and community organising might be the same thing.
Well, that's 100% you, because like Sheffield and Birmingham, what have they got to
No,
do with?
lad, no, it's Pitchfork.
No! How have I got that wrong?
Jamie,
How has
mate.
someone written that?
I know,
that?
It's a good example of the kind of tosser way that this band has spoken about. Hopefully we'll try and not engage in any of that over the course of the episode.
Jesus, I mean, I almost don't know what to say. What a terrible performance from me. Anyway, because seeing as we've now very looked at how the music press has attempted to describe Stereolab over the years, it's also worth noting that they've kind of derided them quite a lot as well. Most famously, there was an NME review of Cobra and Phase's Greek play Voltage in the Milky Night. Yes, that is the name of that album. And this NME review opened with this sentence, Ollie. Well, you have to admit they're good at what they do, but then so was Hitler. So, I mean, they're basically getting compared to Hitler in a music group, which is pretty big. The NME review goes on. I won't read too much of it because it is horrific to hear, but they describe Stereolab's music as sexless, emotionless, cripplingly self-indulgent, self-satisfied, hollow, achingly pretentious, a sterile heap of shit. And basically about 3,000 words of that. Now, obviously, me and you, Ollie, love Stereolab, but I can kind of understand why some people might criticise them for what they see as the emotionlessness of their music. You know, that it's maybe a bit robotic, a bit sanitised. If it was a colour, maybe it would be beige, if you know what I mean by that. And then they do, in interviews and in their music, have this kind of art school, Central St. Martin's kind of vibe that I can understand might piss some people off. Do you think that's fair?
I don't know, man. I mean, as you say, you and I are big fans of the group, so perhaps, I mean, I am definitely not the best person to be speaking about the flaws or the criticism that surrounds this band, but I think the idea that they're bland or boring or a cheap imitation of something else is absolutely absurd to me, because number one, who are they supposed to be imitating, and who are they supposed to be imitating badly? I can't think of any other groups which sound like them, and I think they're responsible for some of the most creative and inventive rock and pop music that I've ever heard. Where I can understand frustrations is maybe with some of the more niche, esoteric references they make in their music to political movements or art genres or philosophies, because those types of references can be seen as pretentious and rub people up the wrong way, and that then becomes a stick to beat them with, and from there spawns all the chat about them being beige and bland. So I can kind of understand some of it, but from a musical point of view, I've never really understood that criticism, to be honest.
Yeah, I think you've launched a good defence there. The only thing I would say that's you need to consider is the context of when they were releasing this music and where, and that being the UK. Obviously, this is the time where Britpop was at its most popular. And considering that Britpop is more or less about back to basics aesthetics, it's very conscious of class difference. It's simple songs like the Beatles, like true English music, quote unquote. Then you have Stereolab, who are kind of middle class Marxists who all went to art school, who reference Steve Reich and experimental film. It does kind of make sense why, like, fans of Oasis, for example, might look at Stereolab and think, "Who the fuck are these?" That. I think, as you say, me and you are big fans of the group, so we're certainly not of that opinion.